it's Little Red Riding Hood. And how are you doing today? Oh, have you had a fun Saturday morning so far? That's super awesome. I'm glad you're watching. I'm going to make sure it's put on YouTube also. So if you miss this, it's okay. You can watch it on YouTube or you can watch it again on Facebook. Now we left chapter 17. We're reading Pay Attention, Carter Jones by Gary D. Schmidt. And we last left, we were reading chapter 17, and the butler was Carter Jones just told the butler that his dad was not coming back. And we found out that he really wasn't that upset. You know, sometimes when you're upset with you're upset about something else that upsets you, you're really not really that upset about that. You're more upset about the other thing. So like he really doesn't care that the people are calling him traitors. It's more of the fact that his dad's not coming back and he doesn't have anybody to confide in, and he's just very upset. So usually when you're upset like that, you turn to your family member that you're most close to and you take it out on them. So let's find out what happens in chapter 18. Chapter 18, running between the wickets. Runs are scored as the batsmen sprint from their wickets, carrying their bats and placing them or some part of the body into the crease in front of the opposite wicket. In this manner, the batsman facing the bowler will continue to bat and accumulate runs until he is dismissed. For the next 3 days in school, I tried to keep the bells up. It's not easy being a Tory, which everyone should know is impossible for an American to be. But apparently the news hadn't reached the 6th grade of Longfellow Middle School. I mean, how would you like it when you stood up to recite the Pledge of Allegiance? Patty Trowbridge asked Mrs. Harknett if someone who didn't believe in the Declaration of Independence should be allowed to stand up and pledge the allegiance. How would you like it? So you know what? It was kind of sweet to be up in front of Emily's class and listen to her introduce me as my favorite person of the week, and then have a bunch of 2nd graders ask how old I was, what TV shows did I like. I told them I liked Ace Robotroid and the Robotroid Rangers just because. What did I want to be when I grew up? Did I ever meet anyone famous? Did I know that Sarah Bixby thought I was cute? Which sort of ended the questions because Sarah Bixby turned red and ran out of the room, and Emily's teacher had to go after her. It was kind of nice to be Emily's favorite person of the week. I never would have thought so, but it was really nice. It was already mid-October, and the trees had shaken down most of their leaves, and there weren't going to be too many more cricket practices, the butler said. We should try to get in at least one match, even though we didn't have enough for 2 full teams, so it wouldn't exactly be authentic match. He scheduled it for last Saturday in October. Early in the morning, since the Longfellow Middle School Minutemen were playing their football game at 10 o'clock. Krebs would be the captain of the team India. Syng would be captain of Team Britannica. And even though the butler kept saying, all good fun, boys, Krebs had never lost anything in his life. And Syng said Team Britannica would teach him the agony of defeat, and Krebs started to walk around the school with Scatchen, Tendercar's bat, and Syng's mother handed out Team Britannica sweatshirts with the British flags on the back and the lions rampant on the front. I mean, really? Lions rampant? And just for the record, no one in the whole 6th grade called Signa or anyone on Team Britannica a Tory. Maybe because it's smart for 6th graders not to call an 8th grader anything but an 8th grader. The day Team Britannica wore their sweatshirts to school, Krebs told everyone on Team India to give him their Longfellow Middle School hoodies the next morning. We all did. The day after that, he gave them back to us, and printed across the back were names like this: Sachin Tendulkar, Sunil Gavaskar, Kapil Dev, Anil Kumbal, Virender Sehwag. Krebs was Sasha Tendulkar. I was Virender Sehwag. Who's Virender Sehwag? I said. Krebs looked at me like I was stupid. 6th grader. The year 2014. India versus Pakistan. The first player from India to score over 300, Anil Kumble at spinner. Oh yeah, I said. I remember the year 2004. I think I was almost conceived by then. Krebs laughed. Okay, I guess it's different if you lived in New Delhi. Maybe a little bit. But at least I didn't announce it to everyone that I was against the American Revolution. I'm not against the American Revolution. Benedict Arnold was a good guy. There was no use explaining, so I put my hoodie and the rest of Team India put on theirs, and we went out to practice our batting. And even though Sachin Tendulkar hit something like 35 runs, Virender Sehwag didn't do so bad that afternoon either. He kept the bells up. When I got home, I walked Ned around the block with my mother, who had never walked Ned around the block. Never once. The Ketchum's azaleas had lost all their flowers. The Brigus rhododendrons were putting on the darker green for winter. The Rockcastle's holly hedge was filled with red berries. And the crocus petunias were all dead. My mother bent down to touch the last spring leaf. Do you remember in 2004 when Virender Sehwag scored over 300 runs in one test match? I said. My mother looked at me like I was speaking hieroglyphics. Should I remember that? He was the first Indian player to do it. Score 300 runs in one test match. We kept walking until Ned stopped by Billy Colt's driveway. I'm sure Mr. Sehwag must have been very happy. India beat Pakistan, so I guess his whole team was happy. Good for them, said my mother. I don't think she really cared. Carter, she said. Ned finished up. I saw Billy Colt looking out his window, and I waved. He was on Team Britannica. So I was glad Ned did what he did where he did it, which he would have done even if Billy Colt was on Team India. But somehow now it felt right. Carter, said my mother, how are you feeling about? Ned pulled out his lead. He was ready to move on. About? Okay, I said. We got to the daylilies on the other side of the driveway. Ned took care of them. For a little dash at him, it was really amazing how many daylilies he could take care of. Okay, my mother said. Are you glad the butler's here? I asked. She nodded. Paul came at the right time, didn't he? She called him Paul. Really? Paul? We could have used him during the other deployment, she said. I nodded. It was like he knew when we needed him most, she said. I looked at her. When we needed him most? I said. She nodded. Does Ned always do that to the daylilies? I had just figured out something out. That night after supper, I dried dishes for the butler. It was the only time he ever had his jacket off, except for cricket. The sleeves of his white shirt were rolled up, his cufflinks on the windowsill. His vest was still buttoned tightly, and his tie was, as usual, perfect. Do you always wear a vest? I said. Waistcoat, he said. And yes. You know who Virender Sehwag is? I asked. Do I know who Virender Sehwag is? Said the butler. That, young Master Carter, is akin to asking if I know who Donald Bradman is. I finished drying the fry pan. We had bangers and mash for supper, and scrapping the fry pan had been a real challenge. So you know who he is? He scored 309 against Pakistan in 2004. One of the greatest performances these eyes have ever seen. You were at the game? I was at the test match, young Master Carter. I'm Virender Sehwag on the Team India, I said. Then you have much to live up to. I believe we will dry the fry pan on the burner later. Perhaps you might turn your attention to the cutlery. So why did you come here when you did? The butler looked at me. His hands were still in the dishwasher. You have a certain manner of asking surprising questions at surprising times, young Master Carter, he said. Because you knew he wasn't coming back. The butler switched the water around, and I think he was looking for something to wash so he wouldn't have to answer. It's not a googly, I said. It's a straight bowl. Young Master Carter, he said, answering that question would necessitate. I find it improbable that I am about to use this word, but others seem to pell. It would be necessitate blabbing. Blabbing on who? On whom? And answering that question would be also necessitate blabbing. When did you know my father wasn't coming home? The butler said nothing. He found a couple of knives in the sink and washed them. He handed them to me. You know, I said. You're already a blabber, so you may as well tell me. You want me to squeal then? The butler suddenly looked appalled. Did I just say squeal? I nodded. Thus, living in America, it's okay, I said. It is most certainly not okay. The butler opened the drain and watched the water run out. He rolled down his sleeves and put his jacket on. Young Master Carter, he said, Donald Bradman was a magnificent batsman, perhaps the greatest batsman to have ever played. As a bowler, however, he at times bowled short on leg stump, considered by some to be a low and ignominious tactic, as you are aware. Yep, I said. Even an honorable and good man might sometimes act in a manner far beneath him. What does that mean? It means that I have most definitely blabbed enough. Now I presume there is a mathematical homework to which you should attend. So he met someone else? Nothing from the butler. Someone else's? Else's is not a plural. A whole other family? Nothing from the butler. In stupid Germany. The butler looked back in the sink. He found another knife and wrenched it. He handed it to me dry, and I did. How much does my mother know about them? Your mother is a discerning woman, young Master Carter, as well as a strong and loving one. Whatever she knows is hers to know. How could he find another family? How can you bowl a short on a leg stump? It's not exactly the same thing. No, it isn't the same thing, said the butler. So why didn't you tell me before? The butler rinsed out the sink. Decorum, he said. And now I think we're done for tonight. I hung up the dish towel. You can be a pain in the gluteus sometimes, I said. One of my many skills, said the butler. And that's the end of chapter 18. Tomorrow we'll read chapter 19. So Carter, we end the chapter with Carter who's walked around the block with his mother, and the butler, he's questioning the butler about how soon did he know about his dad not wanting to come back and staying in Germany. Those are some good questions. But we'll read more about it tomorrow, and let's see if maybe his dad finally sends an email. I know Carter's given up on it. Or maybe learn more about the Australian thunderstorms and the climate of Australia and their trip. Who knows? Until tomorrow, I'll see you Sunday. Thank you for tuning in. See you at 10. No curbside service today.